Hi, I'm Megan. Welcome to today's live reading from Battling Beckett by T. Christensen, presented by Itsy Bitsy Book Bits. Join me for chapter 1. Don't talk to me and tell anyone you know me. Beckett Dawson's cold demand scraped along her skin. Greer Smith, soon to be stepbrother, usually spoke to her in an icy monotone voice. The threatening edge was new and tightened the nervous knot in her stomach. Greer sat motionless in the passenger seat of Beckett's truck. Her head was lowered, her shoulder-length brown hair concealing the side of her face facing him. Greer's first instinct was to bite back, but she took some breaths to quell the notion. She needed to think before she acted. Did you hear me? Beckett's sneered question made Greer squeeze her hands into fists. She glanced at him out of the corner of her eye. His chiseled jaw was locked and his bronze eyes were hidden behind aviators, but they would be cold and indifferent, the same way Beckett had looked at her for the past 2 weeks, ever since she and her mom moved in. She drew another breath, lifting her head to look out the windshield and concentrating on making her reply calm and steady. Yes, we don't know each other. Beckett's response was to turn the music up to a bass pounding, windshield shaking level. Greer relaxed her shoulders, relieved they were back to ignoring each other. The plan had been to have her mom take her to her new school, but her new fiance, David Dawson, had stunned everyone in the kitchen last night when he announced, "That is ridiculous. Beckett is already going there. He will take Greer." Then he continued to eat like he just hadn't just dropped a bomb. Greer and her mom widened their eyes at each other before they swung them toward Beckett's rigid body. Her mom turned back to David. "I can take Greer. I really don't mind," she hastily assured her fiance. He looked up, seemingly oblivious to the tension at the table. David leaned toward her and cupped her cheek. "Honey, your work is in the opposite direction. Beckett doesn't mind." He looked over, pinning him with a razor-sharp look. "Do you, Beckett?" So here Greer sat an amazingly comfortable and supple black leather bucket seat with white stitching. She'd thought all car seats were the same. Greer was wrong. Too bad she wasn't enjoying the luxury. The barely veiled hostility radiating from Beckett would have had been present since she and her mom moved in. Being in his truck, a place she couldn't escape, was excruciating. Greer hadn't moved a muscle since she reluctantly entered the gleaming black pickup. Inside the confines of the truck, the tension was stifling. Luckily, Greer's after-school job at the coffee shack was within walking distance of her new school, and since Beckett had football practice, there would be no forced ride sharing after school, even if she didn't have to work. They were a couple of blocks from the start of the lush green Oak High School campus when Beckett pulled over to the curb and shut off the music. Looking straight ahead, he said in a deadly serious voice, "Get out." Greer looked around the busy city corner. Seriously? He turned in her direction, her incredulous face reflected in his aviator lenses. "If we don't know each other, how would I explain you getting out of my truck?" Greer didn't mind walking. It wasn't far. She was just stunned. Wordlessly, she undid her seatbelt and slid out of the truck. As soon as the door clicked shut, the glimmering Mercedes truck shot forward and was soon out of sight. Beckett actually did it. He left without a backward glance. Greer slid her backpack over her shoulder and started the walk to her new elite private high school. 10 minutes later, she was admiring the awning the big old oak trees formed along the drive up to the school's wrought iron gates. A week ago, Greer and her mom had entered the imposing gates for the first time. They got out of the car in front of the administration building and slowly took in the school she would be attending. She'd lived in New Hampshire her entire life, but had never even gotten a glimpse of this school. What was before them was straight out of a movie. If Greer hadn't known better, she would have sworn they were in London. The school had a distinct old royalty feel. The sprawling Tudor style school had rustic red bricks, imposing arches, and intimidating doors. Ivy clung to the building. The grounds were covered in artistic bush sculptures, colorful flowers, sprawling oak trees, and lush green grass as far as the eye could see. Off in the distance, Greer could make out the shape of a football stadium, and there were tennis courts just beyond the oak trees lining the road. She turned wide-eyed to her mom and whispered, "How much is this costing?" Her mom's awed look disappeared, replaced by determination. She looked over the top of her white Honda Accord and declared, "That is my job to worry about. All you need to worry about is taking advantage of everything this school offers. Being able to list Oak High on a college application gives you a leg up on other candidates." Greer shouldn't have asked the next question burning in her, but she had to know. Ever since she could remember, her mom had preached the importance of taking care of herself and never depending on a man. Now, a mere 2 weeks after announcing their engagement, they'd moved into David's mansion and were at one of the top private schools in the country, which meant it had to be expensive. Is David paying for this? Her mom never broke her gaze from Greer's. No, David got you in. I'm paying for it. She was a paralegal. Even with him paying all the other expenses, the tuition still had to be a stretch for her. I don't have to go here, Mom. I'll be fine at Public Central. Her mom's expression lightened and filled with love. I know you would be okay, but I want this for you. Greer wasn't sure she wanted it for herself. She'd never been the new kid at school, and she wasn't sure she wanted to start as a senior in high school. But this was important to her mom, and she was right. Going to this school would look good on Greer's college applications, so she pasted a smile on her face and said, "Okay, let's go make this official." Now the first day was upon her, and the closer Greer got to campus, the more her nerves ratcheted up. With each step, more groups of students appeared. The lead ball in her the lead ball in her stomach was gradually expanding and making its way up her throat. Her heart fluttered like a hummingbird, and she felt like she'd just run a marathon instead of walking a few blocks. It was like she was walking toward a death sentence instead of to school. Heads turned Greer's way. She pretended to be oblivious and tightened her grip on the strap of her backpack. Conversations came to a halt as she approached, and then resumed with hushed whispers as she passed. The school had an enrollment of a little over 1,000 students, and Greer had a feeling someone new in their midst was rare. The farther she walked, the more she realized she already stuck out like a sore thumb. It suddenly felt like it was 100 degrees, and Greer subtly wiped the sweat forming on her hands down the sides of her skirt. The one thing she hadn't thought she'd have to worry about was what was making her stand out. Oak High had uniforms, but hers looked nothing like those of the other girls. Greer had chosen an A-line black skirt that fell above her knees and paired it with a white polo. Her shoes were a simple black canvas. Every other girl had on a form-fitting microskirt. The only thing their skirts had in common was that they were black. Some were so short that Greer wasn't sure how they could sit. Both the girls and the boys were required to wear colored white shirts. Greer had apparently missed the footnote that girls had to wear sheer button-down silk shirts with the ends tied. They all had enough buttons undone to reveal a glimpse of their lacy, brightly colored bras. Heels were the only shoes worn. They might have been ankle or thigh-high boots, stilettos, or any other type of shoes with a heel, but there were no other canvas shoes in sight. Greer gratefully stepped through the door of the administration building, gradually easing her shoulders down from her ears. She lingered as long as possible in the office after getting all the paperwork done, grateful for the reprieve from the stares and whispers. Greer wasn't stupid enough to think she was done being the center of attention. Not only was she new, but she also stuck out like a fake diamond. With each class that passed, Greer got fewer wide-eyed stares, but the whispers and glances were still rampant. She was tempted to hide out in the library for lunch, but eventually she would have to face the scariest place for any new student, the lunchroom. Greer's strategy was to pick something she wouldn't have to stand in line for and find a corner table. Hopefully it would be in a dark corner, but she wasn't going to be picky. As soon as she entered the dining hall, she understood why it wasn't called a lunchroom. There wasn't one big line where everyone got the same food. It was like a buffet restaurant with different foods at each station. Greer spotted a station with fruits and vegetables and made her way over to snag a green apple. She stopped at one of the in-wall coolers and got a bottled water. With her lunch in hand, Greer went around to the corner where the seating was and stopped. This was definitely not a lunchroom. It was fine dining. Tall windows with arches lined three sides of the room, and the view was the picturesque campus. Plush burgundy carpet cushioned her feet. Wood tables with white tablecloths and upholstered cushioned floral chairs greeted her. Someone brushed Greer's shoulders as they passed and awakened her from her slack-jawed awe. She was scouring the rapidly filling room for an empty two-person table when her eyes slammed into Beckett's thoughtful bronze ones. Her breath came to a skittering halt. For once, they weren't radiating hostility, but this look was equally disconcerting. What was Beckett thinking? It was as if he were studying Greer and sizing her up. But why? Was she in some sort of test she didn't know about? Panic fluttered in her with his attention. One of his friends elbowed him, and his focus left her. Greer let out her breath in a whoosh as she headed toward the first empty table she found. Gratefully, she sank down into a chair facing the window. Once her heartbeat was under control and her hands weren't shaking, she put in her earbuds and picked up her phone. When her audiobook started playing, Greer closed her eyes and temporarily escaped her new reality.